Hi everybody, and welcome back to another Look Back review. Today we're looking at a game that people are already calling the greatest game of all time. Now, while I don't fully agree with this statement, it would be a lie to say that I don't see what this game has to offer. As we go through this review, it's important to note that this game is different to most other games we've looked at before. It boasts a wide array of solutions and tactics to make your way through its various challenges. The game has so many solutions to its challenges that, for each player, it feels like a very personal experience, and each playthrough is different. In this review, we'll be trying our best to ignore the hype and look at this from the angle of just a player picking the game up for the first time and letting them know what to expect. So, let's dive in and have a look at what this elf from Hyrule has in store for us. One reason Zelda Breath of the Wild caused such a stir when it was released was because of its dramatic change in gameplay compared to past Zelda games. We had minor glimpses into what a fully open world Zelda game might look like. Games like The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess had tried to give players a fully open world, but ultimately failed in achieving this concept. The developers wanted to try and emulate the same experience of exploration and fun of finding secrets you got from the very first Legend of Zelda game released back in 1986. Zelda Breath of the Wild was first mentioned in January of 2013 during a Nintendo Direct. Nothing was shown at the time, but people were very excited to hear that the next Zelda game would be challenging the gameplay concepts it held for so long, like having dungeons you had to complete in a set order, narrative progression, and set items. They suggested they were looking to move to a more fully open world experience. Fast forward to E3 2014, and we got our first look at the new art style. A mix between Twilight Princess and The Wind Waker, we see a cel-shaded style that was bold and a map that was massive in scope. The demo was nothing more than Link riding his horse across some fields, but it sent a message and expectations were high. Even better, they said it would be out for the Wii U the very next year in 2015, which if we take a quick look at our trusty Google, we can see that that did not happen. After a few delays due to what they said were issues with their physics engine, we finally got a release date in January of 2017. They announced that not only would it be coming to their Wii U, but it would also be coming out to their new console, the Nintendo Switch, with a release date of the 3rd of March 2017. My god, that click sound is beautiful. It's funny because a lot of people don't remember this actually did come out for the Wii U. For all of you that don't know what the Wii U was, it was a mistake, in the same way I am to my parents. The game earned a lot of praise for its expansive open world, logical real-life physics, its fun game mechanics, and the ability to put the player in control of the narrative pace. The game designers openly said they took inspiration from Western open-world RPGs, in particular games like, oh no, Skyrim. God damn it, Todd! The game starts with Link being awoken from a deep sleep by a strange voice. We find ourselves entombed in an ancient looking room, with nothing more than a glowing tablet to catch our eye. We make our way outside to find a beautiful forest landscape stretching out ahead of us. At this point, we still don't know who we are or anything else about the world we're in. Well, we know our name's Link, but that's about it. We see an old man near a campfire in the distance and we're encouraged to go speak to him. He lets us know a few game mechanics and informs us of where to go next. We have to complete a few tasks for him and then we get a lengthy cutscene. He explains that he was once the king of Hyrule. He explains the voice we heard that awoke us was his daughter, Princess Zelda. He then points towards the ruins of Hyrule Castle and explains that 100 years ago, both you, Zelda, and 4 champions had been chosen to defend the kingdom from Ganon, but you were defeated in battle. You survived, but only just. Zelda had managed to take you away to the cave you woke up in, a shrine capable of healing you. Although she knew this would take some time, she then marched forward into the castle alone, and had been battling with Ganon ever since. She's managed to keep his strength at bay, and allowed the rest of the kingdom to live in peace. She's called out to you now, as she senses her own strength waning. Knowing she can't keep Ganon down forever, you've been awoken and tasked to take down Ganon before he breaks free. The 4 other champions had been in control of 4 divine beasts. ancient machines with magical powers that had been made by a civilization that had battled with Ganon over 10,000 years ago. Along with an army of tank-like machines called Guardians, the people of Hyrule thought Ganon would be an easy fight. But as Ganon rose again, he used his magic to take control of the Guardians, and created monsters to kill the 4 champions inside their own divine beasts. Before Zelda had entered the castle for the last time, all 4 champions were already dead, and the divine beasts had been converted to Ganon's side. He explains that you're free to go straight to the castle if you would like, but advises you to go to Kakarriko Village first to speak to Mipha, a friend of the royal family who should be able to help you on your journey. After this, the rest of the story is optional. To help fill in gaps in your memory, you're given some context to the world you live in. Mipha suggests you even go to another village to make some tweaks to your Sheikah slate. Once you get the upgrade to your Sheikah slate, they give you some vague locations of where memories can be found. These memories are cutscenes, and they take you back to before Ganon destroyed Hyrule. They can vary between fights against big enemies, conversations between you and the other champions, or moments between you and Zelda. The story follows this formula as the game goes on. It'll give you an objective letting you know where to go, but it never really forces you to go there. The sheer openness of the game means the story can sometimes lose some of its importance and impact. I mean, I could go defeat Ganon right now. Or I could collect some bugs with this guy. I mean, you won't judge, right? Most story points and lore I found out about organically, just by travelling the world, exploring the map and speaking to people in towns and villages. You may discover a new area and find out there is some story related content there, but nobody's shouting at you to do it. It's up to you if you find out where it is, and it's up to you if you even want to do the mission to start with. Even for the story, the game wants you to explore and find it for yourself. It's almost a detriment that the game is so laid back it can struggle to stand out. Because of this, Breath of the Wild relies heavily on its side quests to add more context to the game and give you meaning to the many things you find instead of just a cool enemy and some strange looking ruins. The side quests were quite varied and fun story arcs. For most people you spoke to, they were ignoring Calamity Ganon. They were living their lives despite the clear issues at Hyrule Castle. They were well aware of the Guardians running rampant, the monsters that Ganon had brought with him, but they were just trying to get by and live a normal life. It had just become a way of life for them. It's not made very clear, but I suspect the rest of Hyrule, minus a few, aren't aware that Ganon could break loose at any point and take over the rest of the world. Just like a strong gust towards Hyrule Castle and that's it, Ganon's out, game over. But in its defence, if they made a game where everybody just lived in constant fear and nobody was alive at all, it wouldn't have made for a very fun and charming world to explore. The concepts and how you would pick these side quests up and learn more about the world reminded me a lot of The Witcher 3. In both games you would travel to a new area, speak to some NPCs, find a quest to do, solve it and move on to the next one, all the time learning as we go. The Witcher 3 storytelling stands out though. It had a lot more depth and it was just more interesting than in Breath of the Wild. In Zelda, the side quests did help push the environmental storytelling. They gave me a good look into how people acted and how they felt about the world they were in, but it always felt quite superficial, it was too light-hearted. If I learned anything as a reward or during a side mission, it would just be about the location of a shrine or some treasure. It was nice, but it was never really impactful. I shouldn't really compare the two games as they're very different in tone, but I couldn't help see the similarities in how they use their side quests so heavily to help you learn about the world you're in. As we travel around the world, we don't really learn much about the main story. We do hear snippets about the champions, but we don't really get anything else unless either we've defeated a divine beast or with Ganon at the end of the game. Moving on to that boss fight at the end of the game, don't worry, no spoilers. The final battle with Ganon is different if you've defeated some or all of the divine beasts, giving you some incentive to complete those main objectives. It even ends up with a slightly different cutscene if you've completed all 120 shrines in the game. In my first playthrough, I completed it once after defeating all 4 divine beasts and around 60 shrines. I then went back a second time and defeated Ganon after completing all 120 shrines. I did like the extra narrative I got from completing those extra shrines, and I did have fun doing it as well. I wouldn't recommend you have to do this though on your first playthrough, as when you defeated Ganon, you'll end up starting right in front of the boss fight, so if you do want the extra narrative, you can go out and finish those shrines and then defeat him again. So what can you do in this open world game? Well, you can explore in any direction, solve puzzles in shrines to get spirit orbs, you can use these to upgrade your heart containers or stamina, solve puzzles in the open world to get Korok seeds, climb anything, cook food that gives you buffs and abilities, fight monsters, fight bigger monsters, catch, ride and name horses, make friends with a dog, upgrade your armour, complete a compendium by taking photos, take some amazing selfies, solve riddles, buy a house, upgrade that house, colour your clothes, shield surf, glide, throw huge rocks, kill enemies with magnets, and much more. You can just go around Hyrule and take down as many enemies as you want for sport. They even have a reset feature built into the world with something called a blood moon. A blood moon just means that after so many days, the moon goes red, and when it hits midnight, all enemies that have been killed will respawn. They also have other benefits though, like chests in the open world that have been looted will respawn, and all cooking ingredients will regrow. You might think it would take you ages to gain all the skill points needed to unlock this, or you'd need some super specialised equipment you only get halfway through the game before you can start doing it. But there's no skill points, there's no skill trees, nothing is holding you back from doing this right away. It's just down to your own knowledge and out-the-box thinking as a player that limits your progression. You may also think that you have to go in a certain direction or have limits on how much of the map you can explore. Well, yes and no. Some parts of the map have some extreme weather conditions, like cold icelands and hot deserts, but you have the option of finding or purchasing armour with built-in resistances for this. You can also cook meals that give you resistances for a certain amount of time. Food ingredients are very easy to come by, and they can help the heat and cold, and these can be found right from the start of the game. Towns, villages and similar areas won't even show up on your map unless you've visited them first. It even allows you to place your own markers and points of interest of where to go. They encourage you to explore and discover the map at your own pace. You can even have better visibility of the map by climbing these huge towers dotted around the map. They won't reveal specific locations, but just make the terrain visible, so moving around there is a little easier. It's always handy to climb one of these and mark a few key points on your map, like shrines, other towns, villages, that is if you can see them. It feels very intuitive, and in practice it just made sense to do. I found myself marking things on my map before the game had even taught me how to do it. Like the exploration, most of Breath of the Wild's mechanics are taught to you through intuitive and practical ways. Let me give you a few examples. At the very start of the game, you leave the cave and what's the first thing you see? This shiny stick. You go over to interact with it and the game tells you how it works. You can pick it up and swing it like a weapon. Cool, so I can use this to hit enemies. You then see some mushrooms shining ahead of you. Once you pick them up, it refers to restoring hearts, so you know food can be used to heal yourself in this game. You're thinking, maybe I should be on the lookout for other things I can pick up. Next you see the old man. You see some items near him that you want to take, so let's take that apple and that torch. What we learn next is that he's aware we just took those items. People are aware of their surroundings and will act accordingly. He also points out that the apple is cooked, and once cooked it gives better healing. So also we know there's cooking in this game. We learn all of this in a span of just 60 seconds. The game continues with this trend by teaching us most of the main mechanics the game has to offer quite quickly, much quicker than tutorials in other games. It shows you what you can do and gives you a good reason or a benefit to doing it. Each lesson is fast and relevant to you at the moment, keeping the pace going and keeping it interesting. It's also kind of obvious what you can do when you start stacking those lessons next to each other. You know you can throw a weapon, you know you can light a torch on fire, so I think you can see where I'm going with this. Because of this, I would often find myself just fooling around, interested by what I could do or what I could find, rather than following any missions. In Breath of the Wild, 3 things would always stand out about the gameplay: exploration, puzzles, and game physics. For example, I knew I wanted to record some footage of the memories that appear later in the game after you get that upgrade to your Sheikah slate. All I had to do was get to the town in the west of the map and receive the upgrade. It doesn't take too long to get there, and if you go there straight after talking to Mipha, it takes maybe 10-20 minutes max. All I had to do was not get distracted. But guess what happened? I got a wee bit distracted. My side quest started by finding a horse near the stables in the middle of the map. At this point, I'd set myself a goal. I was adamant this horse was coming with me to my next objective. Spoilers, it was a stupid idea. So off I went towards my objective on horseback, only to realise that halfway there was a ledge my horse couldn't get up. Also just beyond the ledge was a frozen hellscape. I had no armour or food to increase my cold resistance, so back I went to find another route. Back at the stables, I decided to go north, just to be met by a massive river with no crossing. Back at the stables for the third time now, I thought, you know what, I'll just cook a heat resistant meal, I'll go back the first way I went, and I'll go over that ledge. Knowing that I would have to leave my poor horse behind, sorry Thunder, I decided to go back. I got my heat resistant meal, I climbed over that ledge, and boom. I got a message telling me that it was so cold, I would still be taking damage even with my heat resistant food. God damn it! At this point I remembered something. At the very start of the game, you can complete an optional task for the old man, and as a reward, he'll give you a piece of armour with some built-in cold resistance. I hadn't done this yet, so I fast travelled back to the starting area called the Great Plateau, and I went and got that armour. Armour in hand, I then remembered something else. Just above the cliff to the south was a shrine I'd already completed, but a little further south was a desert with a massive horse in it. Putting my mission on hold, off I went to go get a big horse. I fast travelled to the shrine, jumped off the cliff and glided towards the desert area. I got the horse and started riding it back, desperate to get it back to the stables in the middle of the map. Just to let you know, in this game, you can tame any horse, but it won't stay with you unless you could register it at a stable first. I knew this horse was special, so I really didn't want to lose it. The two Lionels I passed, some very powerful enemies you find in the open world, did make me quite scared as I galloped past them at full speed. To my surprise, I actually found a different stable on my way. I registered the horse as Grant, and off we went. Now in the southeast part of the map, I went towards my objective, that town in the west. I travelled for another 20 minutes this way, finding a few shrines, a few big monsters along the way, and I even found another stable in the jungle area. After seeing a huge thunder dragon, and then falling in the water trying to walk and look at Zed Thunder Dragon, I abandoned Grant, sorry Grant, and thought I would just follow the path forward and walk the rest of the way to my objective. A little while later, after making my way to this cool looking beach town, I realised a few things. Number one, the area I was in was at the bottom of some huge mountains. I didn't really want to climb those to get to my objective. 2. I was around the same distance away from my objective than I was when I started at the stables in the middle of the map. And 3. I don't even have a horse now. I knew at this point I was missing a very easy path from the stables to the town. I'd played this game before, so I knew it existed. So I fast travelled back to the stables in the middle of the map. I found the easy route pretty quickly, and even completed my mission on horseback. I first reached the stables in the middle of the map at 9 PM that night. When I looked up at the clock, 4 hours had passed, and it was 1 in the morning. I regret none of it. I had so much fun exploring the world, even if it took me 4 hours to do what I could have done in 5 minutes. The only reason I stopped is that I realised the time and I had to go to work the next day. Every area of the map has a secret to find, a puzzle to solve. The whole map is a game in and of itself. It's fun to do and rewarding, so why not do it? Speaking of puzzles specifically, this Zelda game doesn't have the normal dungeons we've seen in past installments. It has 120 shrines. As we've mentioned before, these are like very small dungeons that can be completed in anything from a few minutes up to around 10 to 15 minutes. We also have 4 divine beasts. These are bigger dungeons and often have a few different puzzles inside them. They use the actual beasts as part of the puzzle as well. Here you can see I'm moving the divine beast Van Ruta's trunk to change where the water will flow. It will then interact with these huge gears and be used to solve other puzzles inside. This kind of out-the-box thinking means even if these puzzles are a lot smaller and these dungeons aren't as expansive, they're still a memorable experience to play through. Just to give you some perspective, I'm a 28-year-old man and I was excited to go home after work just because I was coming back to play this game. A game I'd already completed last year and put 125 hours into. I was originally dreading this review. I thought the gameplay wouldn't hold up if I'd played through it once before. All the puzzles, the Korok seeds, the enemies, the shrines, the grind for all the armor sets again, it would feel like a hassle to do. But it doesn't. I feel like I'm making my own adventure again and doing it in my own way. Armed with the knowledge of my first playthrough, I still feel like I'm having the same amount of fun, if not more this time around. I think this is why the story had to take a back seat, to let the gameplay stand out and let the player make their own adventure as they go. If you'd just focused on just the story and forced the player to go in a certain way or complete certain tasks to progress, you couldn't have had the wacky adventure I've just described to you. You would be limiting the player and wasting all the benefits the mechanics and world has to offer. The gameplay is fun first and foremost. Everything else comes second. It was definitely a risky move, but I think it's paid off. And I agree with the words of the great Reggie Fils-Aimé. If it's not fun, why bother? I do like the overall cel-shaded style. I think it will definitely help the game age well over time. And it's impressive how much detail they've managed to get out of the Switch. The Switch is no powerhouse, but it looks good. You may get some frame skips in the Lost Woods, and if you look very closely at the shadows, they are a little bit blocky, but all things considered, it looks great. For the game's tone, it almost has two different feels and experiences, depending whether you're in the wild or in a village or town. Let's start with the wilds. It's an exciting experience during the day. The world is pleasant to look at, the grass, snow and deserts are all brightly coloured, it just looks very welcoming and fun. During the night it becomes a little creepy. The visuals are still colourful and cartoony, but they look more grey and washed out. As you travel around at night, you'll also have to deal with skeletal enemies sprouting out of the ground trying to attack you. They were nothing more than a slight inconvenience, often being defeated with just 1 or 2 hits, but it would encourage you to use a campfire and sleep until the morning to continue your travels. When exploring, the music was always a beautiful backdrop to your exploration. Never taking a front seat, it would just complement your experience. From the simple piano melodies of the forest, sounds of slight tension in the snow, or slightly out of rhythmic music in the desert, it helped give me some feedback about the place I was in. It was simple and stripped back, but it was effective. Moving on to the towns and villages, they felt like happy little communities, who welcomed travellers with open arms. I would always have a sigh of relief whenever I heard the music change, and heard that more upbeat tune start to play. The town's music would always help me decipher what kind of place I was in. The different buildings and people would give me a good indication of the kind of culture I was about to meet. Whether it was the subtle sounds of Zoro's domain, or the more exotic sounds of Gerudo Town, it painted a very distinct difference between them, making them feel much more unique from each other. Moving on to the map as a whole, you won't be able to see any of the small groups of enemies listed about the game's world. They're in ancient ruins, broken buildings, makeshift outposts and around campfires. But they haven't taken over the whole map. You can mark these with any markers from your map, but you'll notice they never go into any towns or villages. Because of this, it helped to lower my urgency as a player to rush and finish the main quest. The people of Hyrule were bothered by the enemies, but they weren't being killed or harassed all that much. You would occasionally come across a traveller being attacked by a few moblins, but they were never attacking any settlements. People were more or less pretty happy and had their own things going on, and if they had to travel, they just knew to be on the lookout. Moving on to the HUD, it was simple and clean. You can even turn it off completely from the options menu, and in a lot of ways, pretty freeing to do so. With no feedback in front of you and using your own navigation skills to roam around the world, it was an extra challenge. It makes you appreciate all the landmarks and unique areas in the game to help stop you getting lost. Looking at the map, it was pretty easy to understand. The terrain helps me to navigate difficult routes to various locations. If I knew I needed to get to a location, but I was struggling to find an easy path through, finding a tower and unlocking the terrain of the map was a must. Last thing to go over here are the menus. They were very easy to use at the start, but they got a little clumsy as you collected more items. It was quite hard to navigate through all the screens without getting lost. I liked the animations Link would do when you would make him eat things, try different weapons and armors on, but especially when you made him eat whatever this is. You could also have a quick view of your controls, mission log, and a collection of rewatchable cutscenes. Speaking of cutscenes, they looked great. My only complaint was there wasn't more of them. They were heavily story focused and gave me a good insight into Zelda and the other champions. It would have been nice if I could rewatch all the cutscenes, but maybe I'm pushing the boat out there. Link and Zelda have some very good interactions, and you do see a real change in Zelda if you collect all the memories and see how she started out before and after the fight with Ganon. But as this is optional and something you can skip entirely, I'll be basing my analysis on you seeing all of them. They're pretty easy to find and can be often found along common travel routes, so I do encourage you to find them, but don't worry, I won't go and spoil them here. Apart from Link and Zelda, most of the NPCs in this game don't really stand out. You can get a lot of in-game lore when talking to them, which is interesting, but as I said before, a lot of them can be very jokey or light-hearted, so ultimately, they lack any depth or impact. I will make a few exceptions though, and like my Okami video, I apologise, I am probably going to butcher these names. The young queen of the Gerudo and their champion Urbosa, Sidon of the Zorro and their champions Mipha. That smile. That damn smile. These are ones I'd recommend you do go out and speak to before you finish the game if possible. Moving on to the enemies, they're a perfect mix of goofy, ugly and scary. The most common enemies like your bokoblins, moblins and choo-choos all come in different colours or have a different elemental affinity. Although I don't normally like this choice in a game and would prefer different character designs for all, they often had other differences apart from just having more health, so I felt it warranted more compared to other games. They were also surprisingly resourceful and could overwhelm you pretty quickly if you got surrounded. At the start of the game, you're going to see that game over screen a lot. Don't worry, it's normal to do so. Understanding your own abilities and the enemy's behaviour will take a little while to sink in, so don't take it too personally. We also have a few bigger enemies in the open world, which are almost like mini-bosses. They have massive health bars and big rewards in the way of crafting materials and weapons if you can beat them. These would also respawn during a blood moon, so if you needed to stock up on anything they dropped, marking these on your map to go back and fight them again is a good idea. The bigger bosses you can find in the Divine Beasts or in Ganon's castle are well suited in their visual design for what they represent. My issue is that what I've described there can just be so easily missed on a casual playthrough. The game's freedom can diminish the impact these characters and the story has on you as a whole. You don't have to do anything in a certain order and can skip over important information. You don't have anything to help contextualise the situation or contextualise the characters and how important they're supposed to be. It's a shame as it's a great side story to go along with your own adventure you carve out for yourself. So what do I think of this game overall? Well, I do think it has a few flaws. The freedom I had from the start of the game was just very overwhelming. I didn't see the point in exploring all the world and completing shrines. I kept dying and I didn't feel like I had any real objectives to go towards. I wasn't really a fan of the Zelda series before playing Breath of the Wild either, having only played the Wind Waker back when I was a kid, so the charms and nods to the older games were mostly lost on me. But after I stopped fighting against what the game did want me to do, and I went after those 4 Divine Beasts, I found purpose in what I was doing, and when I understood what the game could offer me, I started to understand the freedom I had, and what I could do with all the tools and mechanics available to me. I found new ways to cross terrain, shrines with interesting puzzles, a load of side quests, a compendium I could complete, different races I'd never seen before, big huge thunder dragon thing. In any game, running around with no goal can be fun for a while, but it won't last for very long. The ability to have so many fun objectives, and the freedom in when and how I completed them, is what makes this game so fun to play. When people would say it's one of the greatest games of all time, I didn't believe them at first. I bought this game on Boxing Day the day after I got my Switch and played it for around 5 hours before I got bored. I'd read reviews that just talked about the freedom you had, and just encouraged me to do whatever I wanted, so I ignored the main objectives completely. In hindsight, I would recommend that you do follow the main quests and complete at least 1 Divine Beast. I don't think I found my first Korok seed until 15 hours in. I didn't even know you could shield surf or that holding a torch next to a fire would light it for ages. But when I was playing through again and followed those objectives, mostly all that information was there. The game did tell me about its physics and opened my eyes to the possibilities I had. I think this game is a triumph of modern game design, and it makes you think differently about what a game should be after playing it. Never did I think while I was playing the game that this part was a drag or that I just had to get past this part and then I'll get back to the fun bit. It was always fun. If I got bored of one activity, I would go off and find something else to do. I'd go to a shrine, explore the map, or go fight a mini-boss. Or in my case, I'd go get another horse. I don't want to gush over this game any more than everybody else already has, but it is hard to think of an audience that wouldn't get some enjoyment out of it. You have to be patient at first to learn the game's mechanics, and of course, if a game is supposedly really good, that's not something you should need to do. If a game's not good from the start, then that's a problem, right? But it will teach you how to play it. You just have to let the game explain what you can do and how you can do it. And what's better is you're not going to be scrolling through masses of text. It will give you practical examples and show you what you can do. I think if you have a Switch and have a chance to grab this game in a sale, it is a must own. First party Nintendo games aren't well known for going on sale often, and will often charge full price for years and years after they've come out. I have seen it come down to around £35 on the eShop a few times, but you'd still be getting more than your money's worth if you did buy it at full price. Is this game perfect then? No, but it is very close to it. Zelda Breath of the Wild may have lacked some narrative aspects and character interactions that I like in similar games like The Witcher 3, but it more than evens the playing field with its fun, interesting and interactive world. I can understand that Zelda Breath of the Wild, in many respects, will be a better game for more people than The Witcher 3, and I think that's okay. I'll have to admit, Breath of the Wild is an easier game to pick up and play, and due to the design of the Switch, it was made to be fun if you're playing for a few hours or a few minutes at a time. You still get that same fun experience. I personally have a slight preference towards The Witcher 3, but it doesn't undo the achievements of either. I don't think I remember just how fun this game was, and to be honest, what started as me just playing through Breath of the Wild to get some footage has resulted in me, that's now my main game, that's what I'm playing through again. And I think I will be doing so. Well, at least until The Witcher 3 comes out on Switch.